It's no secret that Dead by Daylight is in a relatively hostile metagame. A sort of arms race has evolved as of recent between survivors and killers, especially regarding perks, turning the game for most players into who can use their meta perks the best. Full lobbies of Decisive Strike, Unbreakable, uh, Plot Twist, Fast Track, Gen Rushing, Built to Last, Deja Vu has become running rampant as of recent. Now, does that mean everyone has to run meta perks or else? No. My build quite often utilizes incredibly off meta perks. But does the game lose a lot of luster very quickly if there's not at least two people running full meta? Yeah, kinda. So when the party game mode returned for yet another iteration, 2v8, with no major changes content-wise for either side, I saw an opportunity to test a hypothesis of mine, with much lower stakes to make a relatively even playing ground. In any given environment, will the game's balance lean survivor or lean killer? Here's the data that I collected for this little thought experiment and why I collected it. Firstly, I tracked the killers that appeared in each match. It's pretty obvious. If you want to know how frequently killers crop up, you want to know pretty much who appears where and who has the best performance in these sorts of things. So, mostly for that, but also for my own enjoyment, as I do enjoy tracking killer data whenever I get the opportunity to. Secondly, the classes the killers played were tracked, to see if that had any influence on the final result, and to see which ones were the most common to appear. Thirdly was the kill rate each killer had. A kill score above a 4 was ruled a win for the killers, below was ruled a win for survivors, and a score of exactly 4 was ruled as a tie. This really didn't do anything apart from me just wanting to know the wins, losses, and ties that everything had, but that's not, you know, it's relatively important for this sort of thing, but I could have tracked it in other ways. And I additionally tracked the survivors' classes and how many of them they had with this method on screen now. But in the initial 6 games I played, I neglected to track this information, so those games will be ruled as an X and excluded from any data regarding survivor classes. So with all of that out the way, what's a good data collection without a good hypothesis? Well, this one has one, so it should probably tell you it. My hypothesis is that the more survivors that use the escapist class, the easier the game gets for the survivors against weaker killers in a direct M1 chase. These include killers, obviously, the trapper, the ghostface, the good guy, and a bold one I'm going to put the spirit. All 4 of these killers have minimal chase pressure if the survivor knows how to stay away from their power's strengths, trapper and spirit, or rely on stealth to get hits, good guy and ghostface. This does not mean that I think these killers are bad, mostly. I just believe these 4 are punished the hardest by escapists' on-demand haste, simply due to how their kits work. So sit back, relax, and here is the data, all taken from raw sheets to fully collated for your viewing entertainment. All background gameplay footage is me playing with my own skill, or, lack thereof. Let's start by evaluating how frequent each killer appeared across these games. I'm going to go from least to most common appearance to placate my mind. And remember, some of this data was collected during the week gap where Wesker was kill switched and Scout was bugged, which may have influenced the data a little bit. Bringing in the absolute rare, the bottom of the barrel, the least common killer is the Executioner, with 3 games total. I suspect the reason for this is in part due to a lack of pizzazz. In regular trials, he has an incredibly unique handling of being able to ignore hooks entirely thanks to the Trail of Torment and Cage of Corruption, but in 2v8 everyone can do that. And so it removes a lot of his uniqueness and makes him a pretty clunky range killer who struggles to navigate on larger maps. Second from the bottom, with 4 games, it's the Hillbilly. Billy does surprise me. He's lauded as one of the more stronger killers for 2v8 with rapid mobility and insta-down potential, so it feels weird to see him so infrequently. It may be a skill issue, it may be a I don't want to play on RPD or Lery's issue, or it might just be a skill issue in general from the killers I ran into during this data collection. Next, dragging boot to ass, it's the good guy with 5 games. Chucky is frequently a feast or famine killer in this mode. Either the survivors struggle to adapt to his oddball movements and shorter stature and drop like flies, or they hit one button and practically teleport away every time Chucky gets near. The current, quote, meta, end quote, for 2v8 is so hostile to him that a lot of people are just kind of turned away from playing him all that much, myself included. Next up with 6 games total, it's the Wraith. Our clanging bellboy has a decisive strength in 2v8, being able to bait out a lot of common pressure points without needing to slow down and lose tempo. He's also a really good gen shark while the teammates pick up kills. Then, with 7 games, it's the Dark Lord. The Lord of Darkness has been my go-to for 2v8, but I've had a few other killers on my playlist at the moment. Because of his versatility, he's incredibly adaptable. Bat form is great, wolf form is pretty good in chase, vampire form is really funny to hit Hellfire with, so it's a little upsetting to see him this low. Next is a tie between the Titans of Peak and Flop. Nurse and Trapper both have 8 games each. A lot of the Nurse games come from the start of the data collection and fizzle off a bit towards the end. In my infinite wisdom, I realized I had forgotten to talk about Ghostface. Ghostface also has 8 games under his belt, so take it as you will. Then another tie, Spirit and Blight both have 10 games each. Blight is a much less common pick following his nerfs, and he's much more manageable to play against. It took me, I think, 27 games before I saw Blight the first time, which is huge, because last time I took 2v8 data, he was pretty common. And Spirit, well, Spirit's fun if you have good ears. Then, our final tie of the list, Huntress and Oni share 12 games each. Again, following his nerfs for 2v8 specifically, Oni feels much more manageable in 2v8. I haven't actually played him properly, but I have heard that you really can't chain down with him all that much anymore. And Huntress is a killer who's always fairly consistent if the person playing her has a halfway decent aim. Dragging his way to 3rd somehow, the Mastermind has 13 games to his name. Remember, I was capturing footage for roughly about a week, 5 days a week, and Wesker was only active for, like, 2 of those days, so it's wild to see how frequent he was following his re-enablement. In second place is the Death Slinger with 15 games. This is in part to a lot of people playing Slinger to counter the Scout bug, being able to just shoot from range. It doesn't matter if you can move at 400% movement speed when Deathslinger can just pop and drag. And in first place, to no one's surprise, Nemesis takes the top spot with 17 games. Nemi's passive slowdown with the zombies makes playing this game a miserable experience sometimes, to the point where sometimes it feels like they're just following you around. There's no one else who has the same passive pressure as Nemesis at the moment, and it's amazing. As for killer classes, I'm sure absolutely no one will be surprised that Shadow is the most common class, appearing a whopping 46 times out of 70 games. Brute comes in next with 37 games, and Enforcer and Fearmonger have 28 games apiece. And I collated the kill rates for all 70 killers and how frequently those killers secured a winning number of kills. And the results are quite interesting. Out of the 70 games of 2v8 that I collected the data for, 27 of them had 5 or more kills in them, 37 had 3 or less, and 6 ended exactly 4. This gives a 37.5% win rate for killers across the board looking at this data alone. And I know, it's a very small sample, a drop in the bucket. And if there were more people, and I collected data on more games, I'm sure this would average out to closer to 50, but 37.5 is a shocking performance for everyone involved. It's also not ideal information to have, but maybe this is just kind of an issue with specific killers, and if you look at individual kill rates, it gets better. Not really. I captured both the mean and the mode of every killer's kill rate. The mean is the average of all of the numbers in a data pool. You add all the numbers that you have in your data set together, and then find that sum by the amount of data points you had. If you have 6 data points, you add them together, divide by 6. And the mode is the number that appears the most frequently in that data set. And the killer I'm going to use to demonstrate this is Trapper, boasting one of the better kill rates in this 2v8, boasting a mean of 3.87, just below the halfway rate that behavior apparently wants killers to be sitting at. This is mostly carried up from his stronger games, as his mode is, sadly, 1. one of the more average performances from this dataset. Wraith is coming in next with a mean performance of 5. This puts Wraith above the halfway mark and is also a killer with 2 different modes, having both 2 and 7 be his most frequent numbers. He was a real interesting killer whenever he cropped up. Hillbilly's coming in next with a 3.5 mean, and this is mostly carried up by his involvement in an 8K game. Poor Billy, man. Ever since the existence of Leary's and RPG and the 2v8 map pool existed, he's kind of become a lot more risky to play. I mean, sure, there are other killers that also struggle on the indoor maps, but Billy in particular just kind of devolves into an M1 simulator whenever you're on an indoor map. He's also one of the few killers with no mode, as in every game he was involved in, he scored a different kill rate, meaning there was no number that appeared the most because all of them appeared the exact same amount. Our lowest performer, somehow, is Nurse, with a teeny tiny 1.75 mean, and not even a single game that she was involved in scoring over 4 kills, bringing her mode to 2. This is just a knock-on effect, I believe, of the new rift dropping, the Darkest Dungeon rift, and Nurse getting an amazing skin out of it. It definitely made her a bit of a much more enticing killer to play, and most people kind of can't play Nurse all that well. Blight is next, and it's weird. I'm seeing a lot less of Blight, and the Blights I'm seeing are a lot more cautious in how they play. It's turned him into a bit more of a feast and famine killer. It also kind of explains the data. Blight has a mean of 3.1, and boasts 3 different modes, 0, 3, and 7. So he's become a bit more of a feast or famine killer, as I've said before, in that if you can't really play his rushes well, he turns into a much weaker killer than he was before the nerfs. Huntress has one of the weirdest stats that kind of show the failings this data has. Huntress has a mean of 3.5, but a mode of 0. Her most common performance was 0 kills, but if I remove those zeros, her average goes up substantially. It just shows that data can be weird. Slinger saw a pretty good spike in usage in the first week of 2v8 following the scout bug, as his harpoon was deceptively hard for people to dodge. Despite this, or maybe because of this, he has a mean of 3.4 and a mode of 1, because not everyone is Steely Hands McNevermiss, and sometimes you just need a helping hand. Spirit. She's probably the killer I want to play the most, but just struggle to get a real grip with. Her mean is 3.16, and she shares 2 numbers as her mode, 2 and 4. Spirit seems, at least to me, to be the killer that can turn the game into the killer's favour if she can get rolling the fastest. While everyone, no matter their skill, can roll a weak enough team, Spirit in particular always seem to go on these huge chain down sprees, which fits quite nicely with Oni, who in a fun twist has an identical mean to Spirit, 3.16, and even shares a mode, with Oni's being 2. Following his nerfs in 2v8, he seems to struggle getting chain downs when in Demon Rage, which is something behaviour has struggled with for a while. How much should a killer be allowed to chain in 2v8? It was a pressure point with Legion, and it had become one with Oni before the nerfs, but now? I don't know exactly how to feel about him. Ghostface. Dead by Daylight's favourite stalker with a pale white mask and a knife. Oh, wait. Seriously, Ghosty did numbers in this dataset. I don't know if it was sheer dumb luck or the people playing him being exceptionally cracked, but a mean of 5.57 is nothing to scoff at. And with both his modes being 3 and 7, it makes Ghosty unironically one of the better performers in this dataset. I was expecting Nemi to have a high pick rate because, it's Nemi, but he's kind of just an ever-present part of the mode. And a mean of 4.41 is fucking wild and shows the raw strength of the buffs he got a couple ones back. His mode isn't much worse either, having both 3 and 7 as his mode. So congratulations. I just wish playing against him didn't feel like such a crapshoot sometimes. Seriously, people, you've got to get better with the whip. Wesk is here to do the absolute easiest calculations, no decimal rounding needed. His mean is 4, nice and simple. His mode is 1, 2, and 7. This is where he gets fucking dumb. Everyone and their mother had to have a shot at playing him one way or another once he was re-added, I suppose. With only 3 games to track, Pyramid Head's run was incredibly basic math. His mighty 8k offset by two 1ks brings his mean to 3.33 repeat ad infinitum. His mode is also 1. Man, I wish Pyramid Head had just had some sort of mobility, even if it was just for 2v8. Dracula, the Lord of Darkness, comes next, and he has a mean of 3.85 and a mode of 3. It helps to show that being good at multiple things, such as loop denial, direct chase, and mobility, it helps you get incredibly far in something as chaotic and fast-paced as 2v8. And last but not least, Chucky has a mean of 3.4, and the other killer with no mode. Every game he plays in has a different kill count at the end. How shockingly horror cliche of him. As I've mentioned before, Chucky is very much a interesting killer that requires a unique methodology to deal with because of his height, and a lot of good killers will capitalize on that height to just kind of get hits they probably shouldn't be. So I had a few options when evaluating the survivor classes. Namely, I could do similar to what I did for the killer data, where I break down each class's pick rate class by class. But that would be excessive, because in every game there's 8 survivors, which means I'd have to evaluate over 500 different survivors. So to absolutely no one's surprise, out of 510 survivors, Escapist is far and away the most popular, with 151 survivors choosing the class. Following that is Scout, with 128 survivors choosing the class, with a high number of them probably abusing the Scout bug that was in the game for about a week. Third is Medic, with 89 survivors playing it. Medic kind of feels like a bit of the unsung hero of 2v8, where everyone wants one, but no one's really willing to be one. Guide comes next with 73 survivors, and I truly get it. Ever since Guide got reworked away from being the Gen Rush class, it's always felt a little weird. It being the only class with 2 activation abilities and 1 passive ability is odd, and it stands out as uniquely weird because of it. And to bring up the rear, it's Torchbearer, with 69 survivors using it. Torchbearer has always felt like a band-aid fix to the complaints of no new classes, and more is desperately needed for both sides. I mean, at least in my opinion. There's so many more classes that you could look at, and Behavior definitely does seem to be interested in fixing that, with the recent satisfaction survey presenting 3 new class opportunities. But with 151 people choosing Escapist, does it influence the kill rate? This is the real question. I mean, not really. A lot of the times, survivors that were playing Escapist would suffer because when their ability was on cooldown, they'd have next to no real chase skill, and they'd obviously go down fairly quickly. And if you were a killer that was able to, at the very least, hold momentum when the Escapist's ability popped, you'd be able to keep up with them and cause a bit more mayhem. It's not that Escapist is stupid powerful, it's that Escapist is stupid powerful against classes and killers that are already easier to play. Honestly, Medic is the stronger precious tool, being able to burst heal at insane paces, and if there's more than one, being able to heal mid-chase is wildly obsessive. And in regular Dead by Daylight queues, holding Shift and W is a strategy that really only works for as long as there are pallets on the map. And unless people are bringing any means necessary and the killer isn't breaking pallet drops, you really don't have infinite pallets. And Scout makes that a much more feasible thing of being able to hold Shift and W for a lot longer than you would be normally. And the cherry on top, in my opinion, are the tonics. On paper, the tonics are a great idea, able to help build back tempo without needing another survivor near you, or even potentially turn a bad start around and give you an extra shot at the table. But in practice, it punishes killers by not securing downs by letting everyone have the equivalent of inner strength floating around the map, while killers will only get haste for smashing them. I've seen people complain about tonics at length before, and it's certainly an issue, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as some of the other issues that 2v8 has. A lot of them could be quite easily solved by just giving the killers more incentive to break the tonic. With the game's meta being in an incredibly aggressive state towards specific killers, 2v8 has the chance to be something of a staging ground for chaotic bullshit. as long as both sides get the chaotic bullshit to work with. So, what do we do? Firstly, both sides need more classes. Survivors getting Torchbearer was a start, but there are so many more classes that both sides can have. Especially because, at least for the killers, only one side relies on their macro, and that's Brute. Every other class doesn't really have an incredibly powerful macro skill like Brute's Gen Kicks are. So while you have Brute rely on the macro, and you see Shadow in more than half of your games, judging by the data, Fearmonger and Enforcer kind of get left in the dust by Brute and Shadow, so there definitely needs to be more class variety. You could even make use of some perks that are already in the game as new killer classes, like what they've done with Survivor classes. Eruption could be an entire class on its own, for example. As for Survivors, Behaviour has shown in their recent satisfaction survey that they're interested in adding more Survivor classes. This is good. Like I've just said, they need to add them for killers as well. And in the most recent satisfaction survey, there were 3 different classes they put forward, all of which seem to be like they'd have incredibly useful niches involving rituals, totems, and the like. Additionally, Escapist needs to be retooled. I don't know how, I don't know what you do, but it needs to be changed. Escapists having the equivalent of on-demand sprint burst for not only themselves, but the entire anyone near them, is just not right. Either make the Escapist sprint burst only activate for the survivor that uses it, shorten the radius, or make it so that it is a lot harder for the survivors to get the benefits of that sprint burst. And finally, the tonic strength needs to be increased for the killers. Don't make it blatantly more powerful for killers to get them than survivors, but as they are now, the killer's strength, the tonic strength just quite blatantly favors the survivors, and something about them needs to be changed, specifically the green tonics. I think blue are fine as they are, but green tonics need something more than just giving both killers haste in order for them to be better utilized. So how would you do it? How would you balance Dead by Daylight in order to be more fun for everyone? Buffing, nerfing, retooling, whatever needs to be done, how would you do it? If you want to hear my ideas for how I'd balance 2v8, stay tuned, as I will be talking about it in the section following the one that's upcoming, where I do have just one more little bit of data to show you in regards to 2v8's balancing. So, during the creation of the data pool, I did do a little bit of further digging and looked at some of the extreme ends of the kill rate spectrum. And I tried to determine if there was a common thread in the 8Ks and the 0Ks that the killers got throughout the course of my data collections, and was there any threads in classes or any other relations that could be found there? And here are the results from that. The first 8-kill game in the dataset was a Hillbilly and Executioner combo. This was both of their only 8Ks, and they were both incredibly effective at killing. I believe the map was Larry's, so while Billy struggled, he just kind of patrolled around the outside of the map. The Executioner had an amazing free run of the map. Hillbilly was running Shadow, and Executioner was running Brute. Out of the 8 survivors that was in the game, there was 1 scout, 2 escapists, 3 medics, 0 guides, and 1 torchbearer. The second one was a Blight and Deathslinger. I was the Deathslinger in this scenario, and I was with a Twitch streamer who was playing Blight. Blight was playing Brute, and Deathslinger was playing Shadow. And out of the 8 survivors, there were 3 scouts, 2 escapists, 1 medic, 0 guides, and 2 torchbearers. The third was a Spirit and Nemesis duo. Spirit was running Fearmonger, and Nemesis was running Brute. And out of the 8 survivors, there were 4 scouts, 2 escapists, 1 medic, 0 guides, and 1 torchbearer. And the fourth was a Wraith and Mastermind. The Wraith was running Brute, and the Mastermind was running Shadow, and there were 2 scouts, 2 escapists, 1 medic, 2 guides, and 1 torchbearer. So, what did these 4 games have in common? Not a lot, really, but the most important thing to remember is that in most of these, there were 0 guides. And in the one game where there were guides, both of them were dead before the third gen had popped, which made it really hard to keep gen pressure. And gen pressure is the big killer here. If killers can keep up with gen pressure, survivors will struggle a lot more than if they couldn't, and nowhere is that shown better than the other way around. What classes were in games where all the survivors escaped? The first Survivor game with 8 escapes that I can properly track was a Blight and Huntress, with the Blight running Brute and the Huntress running Fearmonger. There was 1 Scout, 3 Escapist, 1 Medic, 2 Guides, and 1 Torchbearer. The second one was a Dark Lord and Deathslinger, with the Dark Lord running Brute and the Deathslinger running Shadow. There were 3 Scouts, 2 Escapists, 1 Medic, 0 Guides, and 2 Torchbearers. The third was a Nemesis and Huntress, with the Nemesis running Brute and the Huntress running Enforcer. There were 4 Scouts, 1 Escapist, 1 Medic, 0 Guides, and 2 Torchbearers. The fourth was an Oni and Huntress, with the Oni running Brute and the Huntress running Enforcer. There were 2 Scouts, 4 Escapists, 1 Medic, 1 Guide, and 0 Torchbearers. The fifth and final was a Blight and Mastermind, with the Blight running Brute and the Mastermind running Fearmonger. And there was 1 Scout, 4 Escapists, 2 Medic, 1 Guide, and 0 Torchbearer. The commonality in this is incredibly obvious. Most of these were captured when the Scout bug was still live, and so the large number of Scouts that were in some of these were abusing the hell out of that bug and making it really hard for killers to get kills. And when Wesker was re-enabled back for play, well, it was just an unfortunate that we were able to just keep the gen pressure higher than they could keep up with. It was as simple as that. And while all of them lacking guide, these teams were able to just keep gen pressure going. Scouts rebuilding pallets at unsafe generators made it a lot easier for them to do, and it just made the game easier for the survivors, and the killers couldn't keep up. Which answers our hypothesis? No. Escapist on its own, while an unhealthy aspect of 2v8, does not directly increase the escape rate of survivors playing against killers of equal skill level. What it does do is raise the bar for killers to be able to win by increasing the amount of gen pressure by extending chases. If a survivor is able to keep the gen pressure up and ensure that their teammates can keep working generators by the use of escapists' sprint bursts or scouts' pallet rebuilds, they will do that. And so it is on the killers to realize that it is an unsafe opportunity for them to continue a chase with this escapist or scout and disengage. But this doesn't mean that there isn't an elephant in the room that needs to be addressed. There's not enough generators. While there are 2 killers and 8 survivors, there's only 8 generators. And yeah, I mean, that is technically an increase of generators. There are 5 generators normally, and only 3 left at the final gen. Whereas here, there's 8 generators and 5 left at the final gen. What I think needs to happen is that there needs to be an increase of the maximum amount of generators that need to be completed and the generators that spawn on the map. Bring it up to 10. So that way you can still have the same 5 generators as the final hold, which makes it really hard for killers to be able to keep a tight gen spread, but the survivors still have to do double the amount of generators to compensate. There are double the survivors, there are double the killers, there should be double the generators as well. So most of, if not all, of this segment can be completely skipped over if you are not interested in hearing how I'd rebalance the game, which I don't expect you to. If you don't want to watch this section, you could either jump to the end or just tap out here, in which case I will say thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, blah blah. But for those of you that are interested, here are kind of the ideas I've got. Firstly, I'd add 3 more killer classes and 2 more survivor classes to bring all of them up to an even 8. Behavior seems to have their own ideas for future classes on the survivor side, but we've seen nothing of the sort for the killer side. And there are a few ideas that I've had kicking around. One that was proposed to me was just taking the perk Eruption and making it a killer class all its own, where kicking generators marks them. When you down a survivor, the gen explodes. Any survivors working that gen have their aura revealed. It would work quite nicely. You could also have a class that could help make chases faster, whether that be by incorporating Bamboozle, Knockout, or any other any other perk that helps hinder survivors in chase. You could have a class that makes generators regress faster. The possibilities are endless for killer classes, and it is a shame that we've only ever really had the same four, yet slightly retooled every couple 2v8 cycles. As for the survivor side, from the behavior satisfaction survey, I like the idea of the ritual and totem classes, and would be very curious to see what they could do to bring them into 2v8. I've made my point on rebalancing the current classes all throughout this video, but here's my short list of changes that I would want done to all 9 of the current classes. Brute, Shadow, and Medic I would leave completely alone. I think all 3 of them are perfectly fine as they are. Brute and Shadow are just really powerful killer classes, and Medic is, in my opinion, the most balanced of the survivor classes. If you had to do absolutely anything to Medic, maybe reduce the range of the heal beam, but I think it's perfectly fine as it is. Enforcer, I think, needs a slight buff. Either make the lunge increase start when you hook a survivor that's marked and not when you down them. Make that mark last an additional 3 seconds, or get something else to make downing the marked survivor and not immediately hooking them more of a benefit to you. Fearmonger, I'd also give a slight buff. What I've got written is to decrease the cooldown on the Scream on hit by about 4 seconds. There are a few other things you could do. Maybe increase the movement speed while unseen. Basically just make Fearmonger more of an ambush killer class, but not so much that it overtakes Shadow's role as an ambush killer. Scout, I'd give a slight nerf. Either increase the cooldown on pallet rebuilding by about 3 seconds, or reduce the crouch movement speed by 10%. Having both any means and urban evasion can get a bit annoying to play against as Scout, so nerfing one or the other could be a net benefit in my opinion. As for Escapist, this needs a nerf all around. You've got a lot of options here. You can make the sprint burst effect only affect the user, you could increase the exhaustion time from 20 to 40 seconds, or you could increase the cooldown of the skill by about 5 seconds, or, here's a real shocker idea, instead of it being sprint burst on demand, make it so that when you activate it, you need to vault a window and then activate live. That could also be an idea, but I'm not a game designer, so take as will. Guide, I'd give a very slight buff. As it stands, Guide is in a very weird spot where there's not much you can do to buff it, it's just everything else is stronger around it. So what I'd do is I would have the Guide's reveal skill affect both the 5 closest gens to you and the 3 gens that are closest together. They don't need to be the same, they could be clean across the map, but if they're the closest 3 gen, it's like deja vu, you get that effect. Torchbearer, I think, needs a fundamental rework. It is one of the most backwards class concepts in that there really isn't a winning, consistent strategy with it. The fault I give Torchbearer is that it relies way too much on information that you don't always have. You can't be 100% certain that you'll be near a teammate going down to get benefits out of it. So, this might not help matters at all. I would, instead of having the class start with a flashlight, have it so that any chest that a Torchbearer rummages or opens is guaranteed to give you a flashlight. This way, you can extend out the use of your flashlights, and if you can play smart, you can give flashlights to other team members, but you do have to go out of your way to get one, so you can't just immediately go start blinding teammates. This could be a controversial one. I know the beamers are very interested in keeping their beams, but that is my input on there. Are they good changes? Probably not. I'm not going to say they are because I'm not a game designer. I don't know these things. But I'd love to hear any proposals that you have for any buffs, nerfs, reworks, or whatever for the classes in 2v8 because they seem to be the biggest pressure point that a lot of people have with the mode. And finally, killers. More of them need to be added into 2v8. There's a fair few I could see added to 2v8 in the foreseeable future, if we want to be careful about it. Firstly, every single license that has had two major content drops, that being Capcom with Resident Evil, Konami, and now Attack on Titan, has had a 2v8, except for Netflix with Stranger Things, which means the possibility is there for a Netflix 2v8 featuring the Demogorgon and the First. The only thing that's kind of making me halt on this is the World Breaker effect from the First could be a bit of an issue. But I could see behavior making it work, especially if it would be the only killer with such a big visual effect for quite some time. Secondly, every killer who has their map into 2v8's map pool could be argued that they're showing up soon. So that's Larry's Memorial Institute for the Doctor, Father Campbell's Chapel for the Clown, Shelter Woods for the Skull Merchant, Shattered Square for the Knight, Greenville Square for the Unknown, and Temple of Purgation for the Plague. Despite Legion's removal from the mode, Mount Ormond Resort remains in the pool, but I am damn certain that Legion won't be coming back anytime soon, simply because Legion's power is way too weird for them to balance, as it seems, and they seem to just not be interested in trying to balance it. Now, out of all the killers I mentioned that aren't Legion, who do I think would be the most likely to crop up, and who do I think would be neglected for a bit longer? Well, if behavior is smart, Plague won't be joining for a while yet. If you thought Legion and Oni or Legion and Nurse were bad, Plague would be even worse. Her power would need to be completely retooled to compensate. Maybe instead of the... I don't know. I really don't know how you'd retool Plague's power to make it work without just either flat buffing or flat nerfing her strength and chase. There's really no good way to do it. I don't think Knight will be joining for a while either. While Knight's power might be easier to balance for 2v8 than Plague's, a lot of people have an axe to grind with the Knight and its player base. And if Knight were to join 2v8, I could see a lot of killers that play 2v8 just stop playing entirely out of spite or frustration or I don't know. Skull Merchant? The Clown is... Okay, I'll talk about Skull Merchant. There's no chance in hell Skull Merchant gets into 2v8 before she gets a full rework of her kit. As she stands now, she is easily one of, if not the worst killer in 2v8. Or in the entire game, to be completely blunt. Her power does nearly nothing in chases, and it's pretty fucking hard for good Skull Merchant players to get like consistent 4Ks against survivors on equal skill levels. It is a nightmare. Her kit is so fundamentally bad that behavior needs to pull their thumb out their asses and rework her entirely because no amount of buffing her current power will make her 2v8 viable. The Clown is a killer I've had a fucking conspiracy theory about for a while now in regards to 2v8, and specifically the birthday bash skins that Clown, Dwight, Claudette, and Chucky got really recently, like as of now, probably about half a year ago, but they were fairly recent. Remember, these 4 skins were released not long after the disaster that was the Walking Dead chapter launch, and a 2v8 was on the horizon, with badges of Dwight and Claudette in these skins being rewards from completing 2v8 quests. My theory? Clown and Chucky were both meant to be added in that 2v8, but after the chapter drop soured people to Dead by Daylight as a whole, they decided to backpedal on adding Clown and Chucky, as Clown has a bit of a reputation for being a really bad killer to play against and really miserable, and Chucky, at the time, was also kind of in a weird spot where no one was quite really happy to face him. That all changed when Chucky got added to 2v8. Clown is still nowhere to be found. So, if this theory is correct, that means there's a mostly, if not fully complete 2v8 kit for the Clown just sitting there waiting to be incorporated, and I really want to see it. Doctor is a curious case for 2v8. His power is semi-balanced around him being so M1 heavy, so having a teammate would kind of throw his balance out of whack. Like, imagine being able to static blast a bunch of survivors and one of them just happens to be in chase with the other killer and the other killer can get a down because of it. Like, people would complain quite a lot that Doctor can just do remote pressure from a lot of areas that just aren't anywhere near him. So I can see a lot of bad things coming out of it. And Unknown, who realistically should have been added into 2v8 when Greenville Square got added. Come on, guys, he's not that hard. He fits into 2v8 quite nicely. He doesn't need all that much for him to be better, especially following the most recent round of buffs he got. Realistically, and I've asked people that play Unknown that are way better at the game than I am, and they all agree, your only real option, like the only thing that these people have said to buff Unknown for 2v8 is to just increase or decrease the time for hallucinations to spawn. It's as simple as that. Like, come on. I fail to see how Unknown would break the bounds in 2v8 so resoundly. I'm sure someone out there has a reason as to why Unknown hasn't been added, but I fail to see how Unknown just hasn't been added yet. So that's it for my survey data collection. All 70 of these games were captured through the span of a week. And obviously, I need to make clear once again, this is not a representation of the entirety of the Dead by Daylight player base. This could be a bunch of statistical outliers. This could be a whole variety of things. This was taken mostly for fun and was not in any way, shape, or form intended to be utilized as anything more than fun discussion. And if it's seriously being used to evaluate if there's one side stronger than the other, well, that's kind of the unfortunate part of it. What is to be best made remember is that Dead by Daylight, at its absolute core, is a game for fun. And anything that comes out of it is simply... Any balance changes that I proposed are simply in the aim of making the game more fun for everyone. Because if you only play one side, yes, you may want to get more fun on the other side, but what I hope for is a game mode where both sides can have fun with the game that they have bought and paid for. So I hope that the next 2v8 that comes adds more content than what we got this time, and by more content I mean more than 2 changes for 2 killers, and we actually get more killer classes, more survivor classes, more killers in general, more map variety, and just more of everything. But I'm aware that might be asking for a lot. And with rumors of Lights Out coming back on the fly, that could be another thing to take a closer look at, and hopefully Freddy's enabled for it this time. With all that said, I've been Micromatcha, I've been the data collator for this video. Have a good rest of your day, night, or whatever time it is for you as of you watching. And I hope you have a good rest of your... I hope the day you have is better than you think you deserve. And I hope that if you enjoy this, you like, subscribe, and hang around for more videos in the future. Because hopefully the next one won't take nearly a month of workshop and development to get done fully. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.